Hello everyone, I've decided to finally show you all the behind the scenes of creating our new project here at Art Attack Games, making a fan game of Duke Nukem, a property owned by Gearbox Publishing. Um, Pretty much the full purpose of creating this game is to just learn how to develop a game and just to get into the rhythm of knowing how the engine operates. As you can see here, everything runs on a grid. It's a whole lot different when you're playing the game. You got a lot of events that are represented like these boxes. We can zoom in to better see. And what you're noticing right now, some of these boxes have graphics in them, and that's because, like this one, this all of these are labeled as events, but in particular, the only thing that this does is placing a tree graphic that the game that we can't make using these tiles that are on my left. Um, but a lot of these events are created to make enemies, such as this robot right here. This is a much later map in the game of the first level. Um, the reason there's a second version of it, like right down here, R2, is because the game has a uh, the structure of the game. Once the player progresses, the level will change. The older levels will change. Enemies will be stronger. New enemies might even appear, such as with this map. What I'm doing right now, I'm adding in a new collectible for Duke Nukem for the player to collect that only appears after you beat the second boss. And that new collectible is, the babe. You know, the aliens have kidnapped Earth's women, and in typical Duke Nukem fashion, if you ever played Duke Nukem back in the early '90s, that's what he did. He saved chicks from aliens, and yeah, and I'm just gonna run down with you on what the process is. As you can see, there's blocks floating in this blue void. Where this void is that you can't see until we actually start the game is a parallax background of more of the city to give that more 3D effect that is on this 2D plane. So right here where we got all these events, we're going to hit this one. This is the one we're working on. For example, let's hit this one. This event pretty much features the main collectible in the game. What you're seeing right now is uh, back in the day, the late 80s, early 90s, when making a game, you actually had to write out all this code by hand. The reason why it's written out for me right now and that I didn't have to write all this out on my own is when developing the game, it all becomes a feature, such as this. I'm going to hit this blank, and you have all this. Like, we'll hit this, and we'll go ahead and hit OK. And as you can see, it creates this. It's a line of code that's already been pre-written, runs through, I think, the JavaScript. I'm not too sure about this part. I know it does use Java code, but we're not going to mess with this too much. This is actually a finished piece of work right here. What this just does is the game will now check to see if you collected all the collectibles in the level. So it'll just go down the list, and as soon as it notices that you did not collect the collectible, the event will just hit something like this line of code right here, branch in. What it'll do then is just retrace its steps. It'll just go back through the code and read it again until it spots that you collected everything. And once it goes down, it'll complete the rest of its script, such as playing sound effects, what Duke Nukem would say. And in making the game, I made sure to stick with the spirit of the original game that came out in the '90s. Duke Nukem would say a one-liner, and we tried to keep that intact. And the main reason for making these events is this right here, and I'm just going to hit this. As you can see, it shows all atomic metals found. That's what this is. This is the main collectible in the game. And what this is it'll show in the top corner of the screen when you're playing. It'll show up when you've collected everything. Pretty self-explanatory. And then it will erase the event. The only time this event will reoccur is if you enter the map again. And that's one of the hurdles that I've learned when making games using the VX-Ace engine, and no doubt probably any game engine. It depends on how the engine is created. For this engine, every time you go into a map, the events will respawn or run through their process again as if nothing ever happened. So in doing that, we have to make sure that we create events that will run in parallel, that will do all the work of making sure that you don't pick up the same collectible again. And there are events that look similar to this on a smaller scale that will check all these branches off. So this is an event I'm currently working on. So the Babe collectible. So the game engine sees this as a key item. So we're going to go through. I already pre-copied this. I copied it 3 times because there's only 3 of them per level in the game. But we also have to go in here and check and make sure that they are all, the right ones. These are all the Babe collectibles. There's 30 of them. We have to do this because the game is going to be checking. The engine is going to be checking each and every one of these when you collect them, because they're going to unlock a new level, a very secret level, a bonus, to reward the player for going out of the way to finding all the Babes. Okay, so since this is the second one, and it's kind of weird because we're looking at item 152. There are about 181 key items that are made in this game file right now. So that's a lot of things to keep track of. So now it's up to me, the developer, to make sure I keep everything in track. So we have to remember this is the second one, so it's 153. So let's keep in our head the last 2 digits, 53. So now the next one's going to be 54. So we're going to go in here, we're going to hit 54. And it's just that easy. The only hard part is the tedium. So now here's our next dilemma. What is the game engine going to do when it finds that you've collected all the necessary key items? So the easiest thing to do now is to just go in here and reference this, because sometimes we forget there's about 100 different things going on when putting a game together, and you kind of have to pace yourself. You have to do it chunk by chunk, or you're just going to get lost in all the chaos in this management screen. So what we're going to do now is we're going to find a appropriate sound effect that'll play as soon as the game engine notices. I don't want Duke Nukem to be spouting off, because this event's going to run in parallel with the event that checks the other key items, such as the atomic metals. So I'm going to abstain from playing any vocal tracks. And game engine like this, when you go to buy it, it'll usually come with presets. This is a fan-made project, so I'm not too worried about reusing some of its own sound effects. Like I said, this is solely just a learning experience, but at the same time, we want to maintain a quality and efficiency when making a game. Because like I said, learning is key, and getting into a practice. This game, even though I'm close to making it, there's still touch-ups that need to be done just to make it all that much better, and to maintain quality, and to give people a quality product. So now we're going to go through here. So as you just heard, sound effects, that's not quite what we want. We want something a bit cheery. Um, so we got. We can also change the pitch. Some tracks are made, and this is also a learning process for me when I want to make um, my own sound effects. And one thing learning is when making a game, it takes more than one person. So maybe in the future, I would love to get a an artist who handles music. Music isn't my strong suit, but I know what sounds good and what doesn't sound good. And just having someone else to help out really makes a difference because even back in the day when games were being made in the 70s, 80s, it took roughly maybe at least 6, 7 people to make a game. And the numbers went up from the 80s to the 90s. The 90s probably had a team of 20 people. And as the years go on, 30, 40, 50 people. And the production, is getting larger, and that's the reason why games are about $60 these days because they need to make their return. That it takes a lot of manpower and hours, and just from doing this on my own, I've really experienced how much work actually goes into making a game. So I'm going to try to quickly find a suitable sound effect that we want for our event. Not quite what I want. Still not quite the. Still not quite the sound I want. And this is another learning event as well. All these, when you import your own music into a game engine, you want to make sure you title it correctly. That way you can easily find it. You know what it is. Okay, I think I'm going to go with that. That's the closest thing that I personally want, just a little jingle to let the player know that they've collected everything, especially the collected all the babes, and now we're going to tell the game engine what's next to do. Well, the next thing to do is to show the picture. So now the next thing we're going to do is the game engine's going to know which picture to show. And that picture is going to be this one. Uh, it's the same thing except the way it's placed, it's going to be on the right side of the screen, probably up here when you're playing. And yeah, all it says is all babes found, and that'll just, give the player an idea, okay, I found everything and everything's good. And we have to make sure that parallel process is on as well. Parallel process will allow it to run in pretty much what it says, parallel to all the other events that are running at the same time in the game, and all those other events can be enemies as well. So, for example, if we hit auto run, it'll automatically run just like how parallel process would, but when it auto runs, it'll tell all the other events to not do nothing. And the problem with that is it'll cause errors in the game, and when we go to test it, the game just won't even start. It'll crash and not allow us to proceed. And then it becomes up to us to find out, okay, what is the problem? And it's very easy to figure out what the problem is. Sometimes the game engine will actually tell us what we did wrong, and other times it won't. So we have to keep that in mind when we're making our game. So now the next step is going through each and every map in our level. As you can see what I have right here, I have a list of all levels. If I hit this minus, all those go into Rumble and LA. That's our level. Hit the plus, we see all the sub-levels that are marked. Even though this has a name, it also has its own number mark, which is 122. That's a good way of knowing when we're transferring characters which map they're transferring to. It helps us in not forgetting, what we're doing, because this is essentially an exact copy, besides for a few details, of a previous level that we already made. So now make sure we got this copied, so we'll just hit copy, and we're going to paste it. We want this event to be pasted in a void where the player isn't able to reach it, because we don't know how that event might react if the player ever touches it. It's not supposed to react with touch, but usually an event like this, if it's hovering close to a wall, it has a tendency to run. And we found that out when we had one of our atomic tokens, like this event right here. That's our atomic metal. I get confused. I should have named it tokens because it rolls off the tongue better than metal. But in developing a game when we have cutscenes already made, it's kind of hard to change it, especially cutscenes with voice acting. But as you can see, this event is our atomic metal, and this is what you'll see in the game, this graphic. And this is the event's script. It does what it does, and basically this whole script right here will just play a jingle, and you'll collect the event with a little bit of a light show, something that you've seen in so many other collectathon games in the past. If y'all ever played Mario 64 or Banjo-Kazooie, Spyro the Dragon, I'd say mostly Spyro the Dragon and Banjo-Kazooie, because this is the type of game where you stay in the level when you collect that item. Mario 64, you get booted out of the level. This isn't that type of game, but it is heavily inspired by Mario 64, and that's one of the fun things about making this game, is I thought, what about an RPG that was part collectathon? So you have your hub world. This is what this is right here. And here's another good learning tip. A game like this with a hub world, you want, like I said, you want everything to fall in place over here. You don't want a mess. If you have a mess, you end up getting confused on what you're doing and how things fall into place. And you learn this I don't really had to make sure too much. This is a bit of a mess right here, a jumbled up mess. This is basically the start of the game. And this little event is just a blank map that plays a cutscene, shows our logo, shows other company logos, especially Interbrain that owns the VX Ace engine. But I don't have to worry about that, because all it is one giant cutscene, an introduction to the game. And once you make that, you don't ever really have to touch that ever again, besides the debug map. All games have a debug map like this. It's all to have all your items stored. These are pre-made events that I can copy and paste into the levels, such as items, collectibles, just like our atomic metals. And that's just so I don't have to make up this code again. Even though it's easy to make code by just this menu, you don't want to have to go in, because mistakes can easily be made. So why remake the same thing and risk having a mistake? Because human error is a thing. So now we're going to go over here. Gotta make sure that okay, we got our event right here. This is it. Make sure we're not getting sidetracked. So we're going to continue to copy and paste this. I'm going to just paste it right here. It's close to this one. It's the exact same event that I showed you from earlier. And the reason why I'm copying and pasting all these is in case the player, because you can collect all these out of order if you want. Some levels are different. Some levels you might have to collect them in a certain order. But a level like this, you can collect any one of these atomic metals in whatever order you feel like it. So if you ever collect all of them and this is your last one in the map, then this event will play. We're going to do the same here. I'm going to copy it over here. It's right next to, I think, actually, there's no reason I don't think I needed to actually do that because there's no, like, babe here. And here's another reason why. I think the last babe collectible, the key item, and I might as well just call it key item because that's what it actually is. I think I put it in this map. It's hard to see because everything just looks like a block. But that's another thing. You want to make sure that you know where all your characters are at all times. So I'm just going to click this, and as you can see, this is our item. You know, I use a little graphic of a chick, and she only has 2 frames of animation. She shares a sprite sheet with another character model, and that's all she does. The game tells you, babe saved, you saved her. You'll do battle with an enemy that'll spawn using this script. And once you do that, you'll collect the item. The event will show an animation and will erase itself. There's another event right next to it with this one. And I might as well show you this now because it's very interesting. It gives you an idea how the game runs. So this right here, every time you enter a map, the game will check if you've collected computer part B. Yet again, another key item. All these items that the game is checking are basically all just key items. They just have certain names for me, the developer, to know what they are. So the game will check, and if you don't have that, it'll go down here. And it will make sure that that event, that item, won't show up and you won't be able to interact with it. It'll make it transparent, make it walk through. And I might as well explain another thing. Along with the atomic metals in this event as well, if we took this event and spawned it in a wall like right here, or maybe, I don't think at the edge would actually hurt, but if we ever spawned it into the wall, which I've tried doing in the past, making items where you had to interact with maybe a jukebox in one level. It didn't quite work, and that's just the nature of the game engine. It's not on my fault because I checked off all the marks of the boxes. The event was only supposed to play if the game touched it. And the events aren't supposed to actually play when you have transparency and through turned to on for that particular event. This event, you see its name, it's 0008. So when that's turned on, you should only be able to walk through it. You shouldn't be able to interact with it at all. But for some reason, if I put it onto this building wall right here, and your character walks up to it, and if you hit the A button on your controller or a key button on your keyboard, the event will play, and there's no way I can fix that unless I do a different step on this event where the item will actually move up where you can't touch it at all. And that's just another step we don't want to have to do because, like I said, more human error, more thinking, and actually it becomes more stressful on the game engine because uh, it has to calculate everything before you start walking around in the level. So then here's another thing that can easily be explained: loading screens. Each and every one of these levels have a loading screen, and every time you enter a new part of the level, a loading screen a loading screen will play. And odd enough, I don't know where. the loading screen for this stage is. And that's kind of hilarious. There's one in here, but I don't know where it is. But they all have one. Because I've played through this level. It's been copied and pasted from the original level from the beginning up here. It's the same exact one. So I'm just going to show you. It should be, I think it's this one right here. Yep, it's this event right here. This event is a self-made loading screen. Really, the game doesn't need loading screens because it instantly loads up a level in a matter of seconds as soon as it makes its transition from teleporting the player over to a new map. But the good thing about this, and I learned, at first I just did it as an aesthetic choice just to make it look neat. Gives an identity to the level because each level has these screens that come up, loading, rumble. But then as I found out by making all these events and the game having to check long lines of code such as this one, it turns out that those crucial 30 seconds of a loading screen actually make a difference in it finishing the process of checking the player's inventory of all the key items they have collected. So this pretty much concludes everything I wanted to talk about in this video. I hope it gave you a good idea on how much work and dedication goes into making a game. And I might as well end this off in pretty much just showing you a put together product